Hey guys, it's that Dividend guy coming at you with a dividend update. So, I wanted to cover this. I know it's been around a lot on YouTube, and I just wanted to give kind of my view on it, and kind of get the consensus on how everybody feels about the news. So, Intel slashed its dividend by 66% to 12.5 cents per share. So, Intel cut its upcoming dividend from 35.5 cents to 12.5 cents. The 65% reduction comes weeks after the company announced far-reaching compensation cuts. Intel cuts its quarterly dividend by more than 65% from 35.5 cents to 12 cents, the chipmaker announced Wednesday, weeks after the company implemented a wide-ranging set of cost cuts. Intel CEO Pat Gelsinger said on the call with analysts that the company's board was cautious in waiting the first dividend cut since 2000. He added Intel intended to resume growing the dividend over time. The board and I continue to view the dividend as a critical component over the overall attractiveness of Intel. Intel shares were largely flat on Wednesday's open after the news. He insisted that on the call that both he and the board remain committed to maintaining a competitive yield. Intel's dividend yield is now 1.9% based on Tuesday's closing price, down significantly from its prior yield of 5.6%. The dividend will be payable June 1st. Prudent allocation of our owners' capital is important to enable our IDM 2.0 strategy to sustain our momentum as we build our execution engine. So, guys, this is massive, right? A lot of people knew that they had funding from the government for more expansion and chip manufacturing, as in they're making more plants overseas. But on this call, this is literally, it just feels like an AT&T part two. So just like with AT&T, I listened to the call both times that he was asked about the dividend. He said they would maintain a competitive yield, which, I mean, AT&T said that the dividend was safe. So that pissed a lot of people off because they cut it so much, especially after they said it was safe. But this time they said a competitive yield. Now, I know NVIDIA doesn't pay that much of a dividend. TMC Semiconductor doesn't pay, I don't know if, I think they pay a small dividend. But overall, chip makers don't pay a huge dividend. The only one that I think that does a really good job of that is Texas Instruments. But I want to know the consensus of my audience. Like, what are you guys planning on doing? So, like, there's just been a lot of negative news on this stock as of late, and like I said, it's parallel with AT&T. They said that they were safe. They said that the dividend was going to be okay, that the dividend was going to be all right. It was going to be competitive, but this isn't really a competitive yield. And if you're in the stock solely for that dividend growth, I'm not surprised to see a lot of people, leave. I know there's a couple of people that I follow, especially that talked about they were a little iffy on the turnaround play, and they were made a little uneasy about the capital allocation and the fact that they were spending so much money on these new plants. But it makes sense in their business segment to stay competitive. They have to do these things, so that makes sense. So the fact that they're broadening out their manufacturing and their plants, that makes sense because in their sector, that's what you have to do to remain competitive. And I've looked up a lot, I've researched a lot on just the overall health of this segment, and that's what you have to do to remain competitive. So Intel's losing market share to other chip makers because they've kind of set forth the precedent that they're moving quicker. They're getting their chips out. There's been a couple of launches that Intel has actually missed because they're falling behind in this segment. So they're trying to stay competitive, which I understand. But the issue is you can remain competitive while keeping a better dividend. I think that, so here's the thing. So a lot of people are worried about capital allocation when it comes to Intel, which makes sense because they're spending a boatload of money on these manufacturing plants, which makes sense because they have to do that to remain competitive. So people saw this as a turnaround play. But then they cut the dividend, which, here's the thing. If you're in it for the turnaround play, that kind of makes sense because they're taking, supposedly, keep in mind, it's in motion, right? So they want more capital to expand the business, which is exactly what AT&T did. But the reason that people are having issues with this is because you could have been lighter on the dividend cut and stayed more competitive. So you didn't need to cut it by 65%. This is no longer an income producing stock for people. If you had Intel in your portfolio for the dividend, it's no longer feasible. Like, even though they said, oh, we're going to go back to, we're going to reclaim that dividend growth streak, at this point, it leaves a sour taste in people's mouths, just like it did with AT&T. So, because they tell you one thing, so we know that they need the money, right? So we know what it's going towards. They've explained that turnaround play, but a dividend cut was not mentioned when they talked about funds. They didn't say, well, we're going to take away the dividend and hurt our shareholder base, because that's all they're doing is they're cutting dividend income from people, because they believe that they, within the business, can allocate that capital better than just giving it to their shareholders. And they might be right, but the issue is you lose a lot of your shareholder base when you're unfaithful with your remarks. If they told, like, here's the thing, if they said we are, because in that press release, like, when I've watched the interview, he said we're going to remain, the dividend is going to remain competitive, which maybe people thought a 10 to 15% cut. That's competitive for the sector, right? But a 65% cut, that is freaking massive. That, like, think about that. Like, going to your job and like, so let's say you're going to your job and the next day they're like, your compensation is being cut by 65%. Are you going to put any, like, you're not even going to show up to work, right? You're literally going to quit. That's what they did to people here. If they were depending on this for income, and they cut your income by 65%, you're going to go put it into something else. So I totally understand it. So I know that there's been a lot of people that I've seen commenting on this that are saying, hey, I understand it. They needed the capital to put more capital into the business, and they think that they're going to get better returns that way. But other people are less forgiving. And honestly, this is where I would be at if I'm not an Intel shareholder myself, but I did this with AT&T. AT&T said that the dividend was safe, that they weren't going to be cutting the dividend. And then within, I think, like a month, the CEO comes like, we are going to maintain a competitive yield, and they cut it by over 50%. And then people flooded the hell out of the stock because the management lied to them. And that's one of the things that, like, you really have to assess management's integrity. So, like, when they say maintaining a competitive yield, but they cut your dividend by 50%, that's not maintaining. That is complete. See what I mean? If your job said, we have to make some cuts, but we're going to keep your pay competitive, but they cut your salary in half, you're not staying there. So that's the thing is, so not only is this kind of a shaky turnaround play because they're losing market share in their own sector, they're aware of that, so they have to keep expanding, which makes sense to stay competitive. So that makes investors shaky anyway. Intel used to be the leader, and I still believe that they're competitively back and forth, I believe, with other chip makers, but this is now seen as a turnaround play because it's kind of a gamble. They don't know. There's not a guarantee that the capital that's being allocated towards these plants are going to make them the Coca-Cola of their sector. It's kind of, I don't want to say a gamble, but it's an estimation, right? They don't know. So not only are they getting government help with this, they also have some of their own free cash flow from the business going towards this. Now they're taking capital from their shareholder base and reallocating it towards this as well. So, but in doing that, they've lied to shareholders. So that's the thing is, I want to know, like, if you got out of Intel, was it because you were uneasy about the turnaround play, which makes sense? Is it because you saw them spending too much and you didn't think it was sustainable, or is it because they just cut their damn dividend and lied to you? I want to know down in the comments below. Personally, guys, I had this same issue with AT&T. The second, like, I watched that interview where he said the dividend will be maintained, and then literally came out within, like, I think 3 weeks to a month later saying it'd be a competitive. Instead of saying we're going to be competitive, instead of saying we're maintaining, he said we're remaining competitive. And the same thing happened with Intel. So my heart goes out to anybody who lost dividend income with this announcement. Of course, I always wish the best for investors. This is hard news. Just let me know, guys. What's your plan? Do you really believe in Intel? Do you believe in the turnaround play? Are you okay with sacrificing some income now for the potential for this company to pay you more? Or did you just say, screw it, cut them out of your portfolio and put it into a company that, doesn't have as much uncertainty? Let me know down in the comments below. Honestly, guys, it would leave a bad taste in my mouth. I would have sold out of Intel personally and put that towards something like a Johnson & Johnson or even like a 3M that's down right now. I don't do well with not having clear and concise planning for the company. Like if you're not going to be transparent with me is the word I'm looking for. If you're not going to be transparent with me as an owner of your business, I don't want to own your business, right? So, guys, let me know down in the comments below if you're feeling shaky about Intel, if you've sold out, where you want to put your money. And let me know how, the overall consensus of Intel has changed. Let me know if you think it's a turnaround play and you still think it's worth your time. Let me know down in the comments below, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to subscribe to my channel, That Dividend Guy, because I do videos like this. I do portfolio updates. I'm just trying to get the consensus of the market, and heart goes out to anybody who lost money on this. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next upload. Take care.